Dominic Thiem did what an entire generation couldn't. He broke the big three. While Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic were dismantling everyone in their path, Thiem took them on head-to-head and beat them more than any player of his era except Andy Murray and Juan Martín del Potro. He pushed them on clay, outlasted them on hard courts, and beat them enough number of times to make it appear like a norm. He also won a Grand Slam, reached a world #3 ranking, made 4 major finals, and looked like the only young player truly capable of cracking the monopoly of the greatest era we've ever seen. He looked like the one, the challenger built to survive the sport's toughest era. And then, almost without warning to the outside world, he was gone. His ranking collapsed, his confidence evaporated. He went from Grand Slam champion to struggling for wins on the challenger circuit. No farewell tour, no slow fade, just a sudden, shocking fall from the top of men's tennis. This is the story of the man who broke the Big Three's grip, and then watched his place at the top slip away faster than anyone expected. This is the story of one of Austria's greatest players, and the devastating conclusion that no one predicted. Austria has never been a deep tennis nation. In men's tennis, the country had produced exactly one Grand Slam singles champion, Thomas Muster, the 1995 Roland Garros champion whose career was built around clay court physicality. After him came Jürgen Melzer, a gifted left-hander who reached world #8, made the French Open semi-finals in 2010, and produced flashes of brilliance but never became a consistent slam contender. On the women's side, Austria had moments of quality, but never a slam threat. Barbara Schett reached world #7, Judith Weissner peaked at #12, and Tamira Pasek made memorable deep slam runs. But Austrian tennis wasn't known for producing either multi-surface champions or top 5 monsters. So when Dominic Thiem began rising, he wasn't following a lineage, he was redefining it. A huge part of that transformation came through his long, demanding apprenticeship under Günter Bresnik, one of the most uncompromising coaches in Europe. Bresnik's philosophy was simple. If other players trained 5 hours a day, Thiem trained 8. If others avoided pain, Thiem leaned into it. If others played to conserve energy, Thiem played to outlast you. Under Bresnik, Thiem developed a game built on brutality, heavy topspin, high RPM forehands, physical rallies, punishing intensity, and an engine that could survive the demands of modern baseline warfare. This wasn't the typical Austrian play style. This wasn't the product of a national system. This was a player forged through sheer workload and an almost obsessive commitment to suffering on court. From his teenage years, insiders could see he was different. He wasn't just another solid Austrian pro. He was a player with the physicality of Muster, the talent Melzer never fully harnessed, and the potential ceiling to take on the best in the world. In a country with only rare moments of elite success, Dominic Thiem became the outlier, the one Austrian player who looked capable of breaking into the most exclusive territory in tennis, the era of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. Most players of Thiem's generation spent their careers trying and failing to trouble the big three. Thiem didn't just trouble them, he beat all three repeatedly, collecting 16 wins against Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, a total bettered only by Andy Murray and Juan del Potro. And he did it in big matches, on big courts, against versions of the big three who were still at their peak. There were clear reasons for this. His forehand was one of the heaviest on tour, jumping high off the surface and pushing them into awkward contact points. His backhand, unusually strong for a one-hander, absorbed pace instead of folding. His court position was aggressive. He stepped in, took time away, and forced the big three into defensive patterns they rarely faced. And his rally tolerance, forged under Günter Bresnik's brutal training, let him survive the long, physical points that usually broke opponents. But what truly separated him was his multi-surface threat. He beat Nadal on clay multiple times, took out Djokovic on hard courts, and beat Federer indoors and at Indian Wells. He wasn't dangerous on one surface. He was brilliant everywhere. The results came in waves. Big wins over Nadal on clay, the Indian Wells title against Federer, a stunning ATP Finals run where he beat both Federer and Djokovic, and a hard-fought five-set loss Australian Open final against Djokovic. These weren't flukes. They were the stepping stones of a player who had cracked a code almost no one else could. For a stretch, Dominic Thiem didn't just compete with the big three. He belonged in the same conversation, nor was Thiem's rise built on soft draws. It was built on beating the very best, often on their strongest surface. It started in Buenos Aires 2016, where he saved a match point and beat Nadal in 3 on slow clay. A year later, at Rome 2017, he trounced Nadal again, ending the Spaniard's 17-match clay win streak. And in Madrid 2018, he powered past Nadal in straight sets, snapping Rafa's 21-match winning run and his record of 50 straight sets on clay. Few players in history have beaten Nadal multiple times on clay during his dominant years. Thiem is one of them. He wasn't just a problem for Nadal. At Monte Carlo 2018, Thiem overcame Djokovic in 3, showing he could handle the Serb's depth on clay. And at Roland Garros 2019, he beat Djokovic again in a grueling, rain-delayed 5-set semifinal to reach a second straight French Open final. He did the same to Federer. At Indian Wells 2019, Thiem came from a set down to beat Federer, winning his first Masters 1000 title and proving he was a threat beyond clay. Between 2018 and 2020, he reached 4 Grand Slam finals. French Open 2018 and 19, where he lost to Nadal, Australian Open 2020, where Djokovic edged him out in 5, and then the 2020 US Open, where he made history by coming back from 2 sets down to beat Alexander Zverev in the final. The first man in the Open era to do so at the US Open, and the first since 1949 overall. By March 2020, after these results and his Masters title, Thiem climbed to world number 3, behind only Djokovic and Nadal. His resume at that point was clear. Multiple wins over Nadal on clay, big victories over Djokovic, a Masters title over Federer, 4 major finals, a Slam title, thanks to a historic comeback in New York, all achieved while the big three were still winning majors. For a time, Dominic Thiem wasn't just surviving in the big three era. He looked like the one player who could crash their monopoly. But things would soon go completely wrong for Dominic Thiem. His fall didn't begin with a slow fade. It began with one forehand. On June 22, 2021, at the Mallorca Championships, Thiem was up 5-2 against Adrian Mannarino when he unleashed a heavy inside-out forehand, the shot that had carried him to the top of men's tennis. Mid-swing, he suddenly screamed, grabbed his right wrist, and stopped play. He retired immediately. A few days later, the diagnosis was confirmed: a tear in the tendon sheath on the ulnar side of his right wrist, an injury known to be devastating for players who rely on extreme topspin and high racket head speed. This is the type of injury that derails careers not just because it hurts, but because it destroys confidence in the stroke's acceleration and follow-through. Thiem spent the rest of 2021 with his hand immobilized, then in rehab, then in limited hitting sessions. When he tried returning in early 2022, he later admitted he had come back too soon. The results were brutal. He lost his first 7 matches of the season, often unable to produce any pace on the forehand. More worrying was the way he spoke about it. He said he didn't trust the wrist when accelerating on the forehand. He admitted he had lost joy for tennis during the comeback. He openly wondered if his career would ever return to its old level. Meanwhile, the rankings told the story in hard numbers. From world number 3 in 2020, Thiem fell outside the top 300 by June 2022. Despite brief improvements in 2023 and early 2024, the forehand never returned to its old power or timing. The confidence never fully came back, and the comeback that once seemed inevitable slowly turned into a quiet acceptance. On May 6, 2024, at age 30, Dominic Thiem announced his retirement from professional tennis. It wasn't age, it wasn't motivation, it wasn't loss of desire. It was one forehand, and an injury that took away not just his best shot, but the entire architecture of his game. From the outside, Thiem's injury looked sudden. One forehand in Mallorca, one scream, one retirement from the match. But subsequently, Thiem himself has said that the truth was different. His wrist didn't explode out of nowhere. It deteriorated, little by little, week by week, match by match. The same heavy topspin that made him dangerous was also wearing down the tendons that supported it. The same brutal training that built his engine was also draining the joints that held it all together. And the same calendar that pushed him into deep runs on every surface slowly took pieces out of him. Thiem admitted that the wrist had been getting weaker and weaker over time, and that the match in Mallorca was simply the moment it finally gave way. In many ways, he is the perfect example of the new reality of modern tennis. This era is not like the previous ones. The sport is faster, heavier, more physical, more explosive, and more punishing than ever. Rallies are longer, the balls are heavier, court surfaces have slowed, schedules have expanded, seasons last 11 months, and players now hit the ball harder than at any point in history. If the big three made longevity look normal, the truth is the opposite. Longevity today is the exception, not the rule. For every Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, there are dozens of careers that break under the constant pounding of the tour, only to be knocked off course by a shoulder, a hip, a knee, a wrist, or all of them at once. Thiem actually made it large before breaking down. He won a slam, he reached 4 major finals, he reached world number 3. There are countless players who never get that far, despite training just as hard and carrying the same physical load. Some disappear in challenger events, some burn out at 23, some never return after a single injury. In today's tennis, survival is almost as impressive as winning. This is why players and experts have become increasingly vocal about the calendar. There are simply too many tournaments, too much travel, and too little recovery. Top players are pushed to squeeze every week out of an already unforgiving sport, because ranking points, sponsorship deals, and mandatory tournaments leave them no choice. Thiem's career wasn't undone by lack of talent or belief. It was undone by the same pressure that grinds down hundreds of pros every year. The pressure of a sport that demands superhuman endurance from human bodies. And the tragedy is not just that his wrist gave out. The tragedy is how normal that story has become. In the end, Dominic Thiem's story isn't just about the titles he won or the matches he played. It's about what he represented in the toughest era tennis has ever known. He wasn't a challenger who waited for the big three to fade. He confronted them head-on, in their strongest years, with a style built on courage and relentlessness. What happened later, the wrist injury, the long struggle back, the early retirement, revealed something about the sport itself. Modern tennis demands more from the body than almost anyone can sustain. Thiem wasn't undone by lack of talent or hunger. He was undone by the sheer physical cost of trying to survive an era where greatness came at a higher price than ever. But that doesn't turn his story into a tragedy. It gives it weight. Because for a few years, Dominic Thiem did something extremely rare. He pushed open a door that had been locked shut for almost everyone else. He proved that the big three could be challenged, that their aura wasn't impenetrable, and that a new name could stand in the same light as Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, even if only for a moment. And sometimes that moment is enough to define a legacy. Dominic Thiem didn't outlast his era, but he did break into the best. And for a while he did what we thought was impossible,